Well, the Chiefs are the season's over. They lost the Super Bowl. I'm very conflicted right now because yes, it sucks to be talking about this, but it also rules because I get to talk to Craig Stout about this. So let's go.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. And look, for Brett Goodwin and Alan Tipton taking over the Learning Tree, a beloved 25-year-old toy store was about more than business. It was about keeping the magic alive for Kansas City families. Emprise Bank made the transition seamless, guiding them through the SBA loan process so they could focus on building community and inspiring young minds. Emprise Bank, your partner in possible. Visit emprisebank.com/SBA to learn more. That's Emprise Bank, member FDIC. They are awesome. Some would say they're great. And I am here with someone who is also great. Craig Stout. I'm like I said, I'm so conflicted because it really sucks to be talking about the Chiefs losing a Super Bowl. Simultaneously, this is the first podcast that we've done together in this format, you and me, since September.
Correct.
We hung out for a week 2 weeks ago, and
No, we actively got to hug each other, see each other, hang out with each other. It was wonderful. And yet Kid is so giddy about the Chiefs losing a Super Bowl right now. It's not about me. It's about the Chiefs losing a Super Bowl because he's ready to get into the offseason talk. Isn't that right, Kid?
Oh, that's it. That's exactly the wave of emotions. I honestly thought that Maddie, he refused to come on the show today. He's on a darkness retreat. He's tweeting from his darkness retreat right now, but
from a lodge upstate, darkness retreat. It's got great wolves in it,
wild canines, water slides.
Is that what Aaron Rodgers does during the offseason? He claims that he's just taking ayahuasca and living in a cave somewhere. It's just him taking ayahuasca and going to Great Wolf Lodge, terrorizing all the families there.
He goes up to the Wisconsin Dells Great Wolf Lodge and he orders the pup's den, so he can just sit in that den. He's got the little 12-inch flat screen TV that's in 480. Watches episodes of The Office and does his thing.
Much like the New York Jets, we also don't need our guy that's off in the wilderness on his darkness retreat. Kent and I are going to break down this game. As sad as it is, we are going to go through this, get into what happened, and try and make some sense of what to do moving forward here, Kent.
I'm so glad that we're getting your perspective here today too, because the season's over, right? So we can close the book on the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs. And it was a season that was awesome in a lot of ways. And it was also a season that pretty much mirrored the last time this team lost the Super Bowl. And I saw someone talk about this too. And I think we even talked about this during the regular season at one point, but the Chiefs ran through the regular season. They just won a bunch of football games. I think they lost one regular season game the same way that the team that lost to the Bucs did. They took care of the Bills in the AFC Championship game. And then their offensive line couldn't block anything to save their lives in the Super Bowl. And that's where this thing starts and where it stops, I think, ultimately. I know there's plenty of other things that we can pick on, and we will discuss. But you can't tell the story of that game without what happened up front. An utter domination from the Philadelphia Eagles in that game, and it just was helpless from the start, and it just set the tone for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad. We're going to get to a lot of the bad, but this looked like an offensive line that was playing a left guard at left tackle because they were. Again, like this is the other thing. I think we're kind of encapsulating all this. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about some bigger picture stuff as well. As we're looking at this, the Chiefs have been in 2 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback that were blowout losses. Let's be fair here. This was a blowout loss. This score is kind to the Kansas City Chiefs.
And 2022 is a blowout. Like, that's actually a blowout too. Like, I mean, that's the funny part.
Two things can exist in the same token there. So,
Yeah.
like, that is something that we need to talk about. Both of those games are because they had a guard playing tackle and they could not help out both tackles and get the number of people out in routes, and a 4-man rush repeatedly, time and time again, beat them. The Eagles' defensive line is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. They made it happen. They rushed for all night, literally all night long. They did not blitz. They rushed for all night long, and they got home at one of the best clips in the history of the NFL. Pressure rate, sack rate, all of this stuff. They were outstanding. It did not matter who was lined up where. It did not matter who the Chiefs were playing where. I'd love to pin it just on Joe Thuney and Mike Caliendo. No. Trey Smith was bad. Jawan Taylor was bad. They got beat. They just got beat across the board. And it was awful. And after that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, Super Bowl 55, it was one of those that we look back on and we go, oh, Chiefs are never going to let that happen again. Never going to let that happen again. They're going to invest in the offensive line. They're going to do all of this. This is significantly a better offensive line than it was in 55. Absolutely. Unequivocally, the entire center to right tackle, those are your preferred starters. So, yes, absolutely the case. But it matters so much when you can't offer help to just one side. It matters so much when you don't have 2 offensive tackles that you can trust. And that showed up in such a big way. Creed had to help Mike Caliendo all night long. Left Trey Smith one-on-one. That's not what they want to do either. They're used to, as an offensive line, letting Joe Thuney do his thing over there and then helping Trey Smith a little bit and Creed getting to flex around a little bit. It's where they're at their strengths. They're used to being able to help Jawan Taylor or left tackle, whoever it is over there, not both. You shift all those guys around. You put all these things on there versus a good defensive line, and it was just disastrous. Mm-hmm. All day long, it was disastrous. It did not matter what the route concept was, how deep the drop was, what they were trying to do on offense, because the running game was also not good either. They just got absolutely dominated by guys that were bigger and stronger than them and faster than them and just were better than them on the day. On the day, to be clear, we've seen these guys play a lot better. On the day, the Philadelphia Eagles kicked their asses in the trench when the offensive line versus their defensive line was on the field.
What I think is unique about when you're comparing Tampa's performance to this performance, the Tampa game, the Chiefs lost both their tackles, one late in the season and then one in the AFC Championship game. And they were scrambling to try to figure it out, and they started guys that, had no business starting that game. And the Chiefs, to their credit, have invested heavily in the offensive line ever since that game happened. And they've basically said, to a degree, we're not going to let this happen. The problem is that they haven't been able to solve the left tackle position since they lost Eric Fisher. And Orlando Brown was fine. They just couldn't afford. And they paid handsomely for Orlando Brown's services for 2 years.
I would have taken fine yesterday, to be clear.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Fine would have played.
Fine would have played because you would have upgraded 2 positions. And I'll get to Orlando Brown in a second too, I guess, to a degree. But this year, I mean, they invested heavily on the offensive line. They've just been scrambling to try to solve the left tackle position. Now, I will say to the Chiefs' credit, like if you go back and look at the last 2 years, basically, and it's the last two, because they had Orlando Brown playing the left side for a couple of years there. If you look at the last 2 years of decisions, I don't know how many opportunities they've really had to improve the left tackle position. If I'm being fair to the Chiefs, there hasn't been free agent options that are great, trade options that are great, or draft options that are great. And I mean, I've looked through the last 2 drafts to try to figure out what scenario. The only scenario I can look at the last couple of years is if the Chiefs were able to get up high enough for Anton Harrison, the Jaguars pick, and I don't believe who they liked. And I don't think that they were able to get up for him. I know that there was some talk. I think the Cowboys picked at 26th, and I think people thought it was going to be Mozzie Smith if the Chiefs were trading up for somebody. I think it was Anton Harrison.
Yeah.
And so like that, and they tried. So I don't know, they've been hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They tried the Donovan Smith experience last year. Oh, by the way, all they did was win a Super Bowl.
Because Donovan Smith was fine.
He was fine.
Like again, fine.
And yeah, I think, there is reasons that Donovan Smith did not find a roster at all this season. Yeah. So there's some stuff there that kept him, from finding an opportunity this year. But yeah, like this team just failed miserably at the left tackle, and they threw 3 different bodies at him, and all of them failed. And so Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they got together and they decided, like, let's throw Joe Thuney out there, and let's see what happens. And we feel comfortable enough. We found a baseline for our offense, but there is no game plan for run through someone's face. And the Philadelphia Eagles just bull rushed the Chiefs tackles all the way into Patrick Mahomes. They shrunk the width of the pocket and the interior. I mean, Caliendo got cooked too.
Mm-hmm.
I say I don't know if Orlando Brown's not getting cooked the way Joe Thuney was. You're not bull rushing Orlando Brown the way that Joe Thuney. So maybe that something like that, fixes the problem, right? But I don't know, man. They failed miserably at the left tackle position all year, and they were able to mask it and win 15 of 16 games with their starters doing it. And it's like that's where it's tough. It's like this is what got them there. They won the AFC again.
Let's couch all of this. Kent and I, and all of us listening to this, realize that this was still a beyond expectations seasons, or maybe it is satisfying expectations to just go to the Super Bowl every year. That's kind of what this team does right now. By no means are we sitting here being like, blow up the entire team, it's awful, fire Brett Beach. No, God, no. That's not what we're saying at all here. It was a great performance. And this team has given us so much over the past 6-7 years. It's unreal what we've gotten to experience as Chiefs fans. So by no means do we want to sound jaded about any of this, but they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl again for the second time. They have tried to find left tackles, but we can sit here and look at all of these moves in a vacuum and be like, okay, they went and tried to get Trent Williams. Trent Williams wanted to stay in San Francisco. Cool. They pivoted to Orlando Brown Jr. Orlando Brown Jr. was fine. Like I said, he was absolutely fine. They go out. They want to get Anton Harrison. They can't get Anton Harrison there. They draft Wanye Morris in the 3rd round and turn around and immediately sign a 1-year deal for Donovan Smith. Then they turn around this year, sign a guy in a very good offensive tackle class in Kingsley Suamataia in the 2nd round, and don't bring in competition and say, okay, here we go. Kingsley, Wanye, we want you to compete for this left tackle job. Kingsley starts the season, looks bad, real bad. Looks like a guy who needs a lot of seasoning. They put Wanye in. Wanye starts okay, but gets out on him just like last year, real bad. They sign DJ Humphries off the street, coming off of an injury, stick him in there. He gets hurt the first game. They don't go back to the 2 young guys. They got to go to Joe Thuney here. We can look at all of these and say, okay, process. It was fine. Who else could they have gotten and all of that? I think the Kansas City Chiefs have a little bit of a left tackle evaluation problem.
Mhm.
Of all of these guys that they have been able to identify right now, Orlando Brown Jr. is unequivocally the best left tackle of that group. I'm including Joe Thuney in this group, but is unequivocally the best left tackle of that group. So evaluation was good. Trade compensation was pretty good. They misevaluated his contract. No, they didn't get him in the building, immediately sign him. Part of that's Orlando and his agent. Don't get me wrong.
It was
But yeah,
largely them,
it is.
which
Largely
is why
them.
they had to cold call people the night before free agency and had to settle for what
Correct.
the Cincinnati Bengals gave. I'm just saying.
Correct. I know, but that's part of the evaluation, though. You have to know that as a front office. You have to know how you're going to be able to negotiate with these guys. It's not all about on the field. It's about off the field, too. That's why they get paid the money that they do. That's why Brett Veach is really good at doing what he does. It's because he's usually spot on with identifying these sorts of things. They have just routinely missed at left tackle. That game is significantly different if they have fine at left tackle and great at left guard, because Creed Humphrey is also helping Trey Smith. And now all of a sudden, you don't have two tackles that are completely vertical setting. Jawan Taylor just does that. That's what he does. Maddie pointed out that Joe Thuney didn't used to do that. And then after the Houston game, he just kind of settled into that. Just completely collapsing the pocket around Mahomes with nowhere to step up. There just was no place for Patrick Mahomes to go. They couldn't get into their passing concepts. They couldn't get into some of the things they wanted to do. And a fine left tackle solves the front of the pocket in a bigger, better way and creates more space. They just have to find fine. That's all it is. We're not asking, go trade up to top 10 to get a guy. Trade for the best left tackle in the league would be awesome. They don't have that luxury. They're too good. They can't get guys like that on this roster without making a significant move. So just go get fine.
Here's the problem. Fine cost the Chiefs a high second-round pick.
It did.
Like, the value of it. Like, they had to trade out of the first-round pick. It was, like, I think they gave up roughly the value, I think if I remember correctly, roughly the value of the 38th pick for Orlando Brown Jr., if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere in that range. It was a high second-round pick.
They said it was 40-ish. Yeah.
And so, like, this is where I will defend, I think, the organization. Because, like, I'm not, like, yes, they failed to figure out the left tackle position, but it's not like they were dealt a great hand either, because it is very hard to figure out one of the most important positions in football, especially when you're picking in the 30s. And a tackle that's worth, taking at 60 is a late first-round pick, and a tackle worth taking at 90 is a second-round pick. Not quite, but, like, it's the second round, the day two tackles, it's not a high hit rate. Those don't happen very often.
They don't.
The Chiefs took that route and they threw numbers at it. They said, we're gonna try to find a left tackle. We're gonna try to figure this out. We've got a couple guys we like. We're gonna have a healthy competition between Wanye Morris and Kingsley Suamata-Ia. And it didn't work out. And so that's where the Chiefs got where they were. And they tried to sign DJ Humphries. Like, they tried. They did. They tried. They tried multiple times. And it couldn't figure it out.
The part that, and I think that the part that most Chiefs fans were saying coming out of the half, and I get why, Andy Reid sticks with his guys. More often than not, it takes something super catastrophic to rotate guys around. And clearly, Patrick Mahomes, who has a very big say and who's protecting him,
for sure,
preferred Joe Thuney.
Yes,
there. But I was
understandable. I
joining
get
the
why
chorus.
He would do that too.
I do too. I completely get it. But I was still joining the chorus of people that are saying DJ Humphries cannot be worse than what Joe Thuney is giving up right now. And I know that Joe Thuney at left guard is elite. It's not a knock on Joe. He's performing admirably. He's being asked to do one of the hardest tasks in national football this year. It's why Tom Brady gave him an Offensive Player of the Year vote. And Teddy Bruschi as well. I mean, I know they're all buds, but like, that's why it is admirable, the job that he has had to do this year. But at a certain point, you have to admit, The arm length isn't there. The ability to stand up to that bull rush wasn't there, especially when you're vertical setting and you're allowing Nolan Smith or Brandon Graham to really get up ahead of steam and just get into his chest immediately and drive him right back into the pocket. That's not his game. That's not what he's best at. DJ Humphries is getting beat that bad as well. At least you've got somebody on the interior that is elite. And that's where I was coming from all along. When it started so poorly and continued so poorly, it just became a question of why, Andy? Why not try something different? Why not give them a shot to try and make this comeback? And by the time it really was embarrassing out there for the offensive line, it was too late. It was too late to make that change.
I think it was funny how I don't know when I think most fans, and we were even joking, 24. Well, if you squint, maybe they can kind of, because we've seen this team do this so many times, and we've seen Patrick Mahomes lead drives that and lead teams to insane victories. And who's to say that Patrick Mahomes can't bring you back from 20 plus points, because he's done it in the past. And you kept waiting for that one spark, that one moment. And it just really never came. It just never came. This team, Mahomes had one of the worst performances of his career. And I think very obviously, that offensive line and that he had blocking for him, and that defensive line that he had coming after him affected him from about the start of the game. Inarguably, he was worried, he was struggling, he was concerned, he was over, it was the pressure was on very quickly for him. He looked sped up early on. Some of his scrambling patterns were inconsistent. Yeah. With what you've seen, you could tell he was off very quickly. And that's actually one of the first kind of warning, things that gave me a little concern, is he tried to run out a direction that he normally wouldn't. He ran into more defenders, then try to spin around, and he would normally find different escape routes, and he had better escape routes than he typically did. That was the first thing that kind of looked a little bit concerning, and it really didn't get any better from there. He dirted a couple throws. I'll say this too: if you could, that Cooper DeJean interception, that wasn't because of the offensive line. Now, if you want to argue the play calling, running a sprint flood, half field read, and condensing space, if you want to argue we're calling that play on 3rd and 15 because we can't drop back and pass, because we can't even drop back and throw a hitch on 1st and 10, I'll hear that. But that play had nothing to do with pressure. That play had everything to do with a bad throw, a bad decision, and a tremendous play by Cooper DeJean. So that pick six is not if you want to argue the snowball effect of all that stuff, sure. But that was just a really, really poor decision throw from Mahomes that went from a 10-0 game to a 17-0 game, and then everything kind of snowballed from there too.
On top of all of that, and we're talking about a guy who threw for 257 yards. Granted, a lot of that happened right there at the very end of the game there. But 65% completion percentage did not feel that high at all. I think I remember every single one of those 11 incompletions. I do. And obviously every single one of those 6 sacks. But it wasn't just the 2 interceptions. Think about that first 3rd down play on the very first drive there, that he's rolling out to his right. He started to roll out to his left. It wasn't there. Escapes a sack, rolls out to his right. That should have been picked 2. Threw lob one into triple coverage to Hollywood Brown. Consistently making poor decisions, and not always from a forcing it standpoint. Think of the DeAndre Hopkins, the 4th down play, 4th and 5, I believe. It's an out route. It's not a great, crisp, clean out route there, but that ball's not where it needs to be. It's behind him. It's to the point where Avonte Maddox can make a play on it. These are uncharacteristic things for Patrick Mahomes, and usually what we see is yeah, we see some slow starts, especially against Vic Fangio. This is not the first time that we've seen Vic Fangio flummox Patrick Mahomes. He certainly has before in the past, but we've always seen Mahomes and Andy together make adjustments, make changes, start dialing in on some of the things to build his confidence, start getting to the point where they can move the ball a little more effectively and where it doesn't feel like, a Sisyphean task, pushing this boulder uphill. It doesn't feel like that. And they never did that. When did they get into the quick game? They didn't. They didn't get into the quick game at all. They didn't get into the RPOs at all. They didn't get into some of that. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, the offensive line was getting destroyed. Yes, they absolutely were. What's one of the best ways that you can avoid some of those things? Getting into those things where the ball's out of his hands quickly, especially against zone coverage that's not pressing. And guess what Vic Fangio was doing all game long? It's wild to watch some of the ways that some of those concepts were built in. Their backside, some of them are there. Andy had some of them, but it wasn't the focus. It wasn't what they built the offense out of, and it wasn't what they adjusted the offense into when Patrick Mahomes was struggling. So they were saying, once again, and it works, it works plenty of times, Patrick, go save us. Patrick did not have the answers this week. He looked mortal. He looked like a guy who wasn't on the same page as everybody, who was playing scared. And then, of course, he got hit so many times that, of course, he's playing scared. He's rocked at that point. But they didn't have the easy answers for him to build that confidence where he can throw with his chest, where he has the solutions, and he was not making good decisions within the structure of the play when he did have time. There's one, Xavier Worthy streaking wide open down the left side of the field late. This is the one I think everybody will remember. I believe it was Trey Smith holding penalty where Patrick Mahomes scrambles near the line of scrimmage, dances around, dances back, and all that. Ends up taking kind of a heavy hit towards the end of the play. Not called. That's fine. The holding penalty was right. That was when Patrick Mahomes was escaping the pocket, not in the structure of the play. Patrick Mahomes' eyes just completely drop at that point. He's not looking up anymore. Xavier Worthy is streaking down the sideline wide open with no safety over the top yet again. And Patrick Mahomes has time in the pocket, isn't seeing it, making bad decisions, expounding on some of these offensive line issues. It was just really tough to watch a guy that just didn't have it on that day when we're just so used to him being Superman all the time.
Well, the funny thing is he still did some Superman stuff even in the midst of all that terror, which is just so like, it's like, it's tough to like get overly critical of literally the best player in the world, but it was just such an uncharacteristic performance from him. Couple of things. I think the deep ball was very, very much a part of the game plan. I think they wanted to I think they wanted to air that thing out, and I think they wanted to try to take advantage down the field over the top of this Eagles defense. You saw some of the play calls with Xavier Worthy. You saw them flat out hitting some of the vertical stuff late in the game. Mm-hmm. I think they wanted they had some concepts dialed up that they were trying to get the ball over the top to Xavier Worthy. This was going to be a Xavier Worthy game, and it wound up being it. But it was going to be a Xavier Worthy game if they were able to protect the ball a little bit too. Or to protect the quarterback a little bit too. That was very much part of what they were trying to do. Yeah, it still was. Yeah, it was the only thing that worked. I think it got to a point where Philly wasn't even honoring the vertical stuff all that much either, and they were squatting on things. And I look at some like the easy outside hitch route completions and stuff like that. They were driving on that stuff. They weren't scared of anything because it from Jump Street, the Chiefs could not they couldn't get the throws off. And so the Eagles started condensing a little bit, squatting, flat-footed with the safeties, flat-footed with the corners a little bit more. They weren't as worried about getting beat deep because the Chiefs literally did not have time to do it. And so that compounded the issues that this team had. I mean, Travis Kelce. Yeah,
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. That'll be a final bullet. Yeah,
I love Travis Kelce so much. Just know that. But yeah, it all compounded, man. And like Mahomes played worse and worse as things gone on during that stretch, and they just couldn't find anything. They had no answers, and the Eagles, to their credit, just weren't honoring some of the stuff. I mean, like, just go back and like they're flat-footed on hitch routes, and like they're not open.
But see, that's the thing. Like, you can be flat-footed still and throw a glance RPO. Throw a slant. Throw something like that. Take the 5 yards. I mean, here are some of the. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Well,
I just had some stuff.
I think. Well, and I do think like the Eagles they're spot dropping a little bit more.
A little bit.
And like that kind of like I think that messed with some of that stuff in the middle of the field from time to time. It wasn't like a spot drop where I'm turning and running and spot dropping. It's more like I'm gonna stay on I'm gonna stay on a vertical plane. I'm not gonna like widen here and like they did some stuff kind of boxing up Travis Kelce there, and it was eyes on Pat, but not getting influenced too much. Like if they did some good things there. It is.
Yes, I don't want to take
the backers there too.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from the Philadelphia Eagles defense. That I mean, Vic Fangio was the MVP. Jalen Hurts played awesome. Don't get me wrong, but Vic Fangio was the MVP there. But take some of this stuff that gets you in more advantageous down and distance situations. They just couldn't all game long. 3rd and 11, first drive. That's the Hollywood Brown one. 3rd and 9, second drive is a part of this. Then 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 3. Those felt like, they legitimate chances. Weren't able to convert either one of those. 3rd and 16, that's the Cooper DeJean pick, as a part of that. 3rd and 9. Now you're getting into the second half. 3rd and 11, 3rd and 17. Those are not winning downs when you can't pass protect. Those are not the things that you can win. At a certain point, I understand how you get yourself in those situations early. When your offensive line is getting wrecked, you got to figure out a way to get 3 and then 3 and set yourself up for that 3rd and 3 or that 3rd and 4. Try and figure out a way to shorten that 3rd down. It was just so predictable. And it got to the point where it was just, they've got to pass. So we're going to tee off. We're going to keep a dome on the top of this, and then we're going to win with this 4-man rush while they're trying to hit these deep passing concepts rather than trying to just pick up some more chunk plays. Again, game at that point, when I stopped listing there, that's 24-0. That's right out of the 3rd quarter. The game was over at that point. We all knew the game was over at that point, but the adjustments weren't there. And Patrick either wasn't taking the short stuff or wasn't getting dialed up that short stuff within the structure of the play. And that's what made him look mortal. And so you just have him back there taking hit after hit after hit and taking a double fist punch to the face from Jordan Davis on a fumble there. It's at a certain point, you just turtle. It's inherent in the nature of playing quarterback there. You can't just stand back there and continually just, next play, when you are just constantly being beaten up, hit, torched, and not able to play within the structure of the play. And that's what it looked like. It just didn't seem like they had answers on 1st and 2nd downs. I get why. What happened on 3rd downs, because they were just in such these chasm, to the 1st down marker there.
Do you think the Chiefs should have run the football more?
No, I don't. At least not, call an RPO. You hand a ball off on an RPO, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. Call more RPOs, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Mike Caliendo, every time he tried to run block, got shoved 3 yards in the backfield. Like it didn't matter. I would have liked to see them get into the run game a little bit more, maybe vary it up a little bit. But the Philadelphia Eagles are really good tacklers on the perimeter, one of the best tackling football teams on the perimeter in the National Football League. So what are you going to do? Have Xavier Worthy out there and take a 2-yard loss? No, you don't want to do that. And then in between the tackles, your entire interior is just getting destroyed. So no, running the football I don't think solves anything, but getting yourself into those positions where if you have linebackers that are taking a negative step that are not flat-footed, I know most of the time they were, but if they're taking that negative step, try and get 3 rather than just sitting back there and throwing incomplete passes or taking a sack because you are just trying to get it all back on 1st and 2nd down every single time.
Yeah, people are like, hey, why didn't they run jet sweeps? Why didn't they try?
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm just like, that.
Yeah.
that wouldn't have worked. Those things
No.
don't work against the Eagles. And
That's what they're best at defending. Yeah.
like you don't run that, and I don't think I don't have a problem with them not running the football. And I think, they wanted to try to drop back, take easy completions, wear the rush of the Eagles out, just wear those young kids out and try to wear them down in the second half. I don't really have a ton of issues with them trying to drop back, put the ball in Mahomes' hands, and
it's what you want. It's how you built this team. And I get that. But at what point do you watch him not be? At what point, when you have 23 total yards in the first half, do you not try and do something different? That's my thing.
Yeah, I think at that point it was like, well, I don't know if we can afford to run the football to close this game.
No, I'm not talking about running the football. More quick game, more stuff like that. Incorporate some of the stuff to pick up smaller chunks rather than trying to get it all back.
Well, that was cathartic.
Was it?
No. We're going to take a break. We'll talk about some of the good things that happened in this game right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Absolutely great episode of the KC Laboratory here because Craig Stout's back. I'm serious. This is the first time we've done a screen show like this where we're like not like a remote show since September. Like, seriously, it was like week 2. And like it's been you and Maddie every other time during the season. And I was getting very jealous. I didn't ask you to do 21 questions because I know you got enough on your plate already. Maddie just had no shame.
I love that you're like, I respect that Craig is taking a break from KCSN.
That's what
right
I
now.
did.
Maddie's just like, no, F it. I'm calling Craig.
That's exactly what it was. I just loved you enough to respect your space, and Maddie's just,
Maddie just loves me more. I understand. Yeah.
No, I love you more, and I'm sacrificing time with you. I'm sacrificing time with you is what I'm doing. So that, 38 minutes of sadness. And I don't, this definitely.
Are you talking about Super Bowl 59? 38 minutes of sadness?
That was 60.
No, the rest of it was acceptance, not sadness.
I think talking about some of the good things in this game is kind of like that meme with Chris Paul hitting a 3 down 60.
To cut it to 42.
Yeah. And we don't have to do this for very long. But there were some good things. We'll start with Xavier Worthy.
Yes.
The shining light in this game. Like, I know, like, for parts of it, the game was out of reach, but it's extremely out of reach. Michael Jordan and Space Jam levels of out of reach. Like, just not even close. Xavier Worthy still did some very good things in this game.
Yes.
And he was running free down the field even when Patrick Mahomes was getting, the break speed off of him from the pocket. There were opportunities for him. He was due for a big game. If the Chiefs are able to protect, I think he has a massive game. I think there's a chance that he has the same kind of stat line that he had in this game in a neutral type football game. That's what I think I think the Chiefs were going to trying to hit some plays down the field. If you just look at some of the stuff that they were doing, they got some good matchups. They had some good opportunities and they missed them. Mm-hmm. But Xavier Worthy, man, what a performance from the young kid.
I mean, he is Patrick Mahomes keeping his eyes up in a clean pocket. I know, seeing green in front of him and all that at the point of the game that it just was what it was. But he is that play and Pat throwing a decent throw down the sideline to him away from 200 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. He had the 5th most receiving yards in the history of the Super Bowl. Like, that's unreal. An unreal performance from a rookie guy who was obviously dissatisfied. at the end of all of this. You heard him talk about it. It's like he posts online and all that. It's like, no, I'm not happy with 8 receptions for 170 or 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. He played so well within the structure of the offense. He was the only good part about the offense. Like there's very few things that we could talk about positively on offense, and Xavier Worthy is all 5 of the top 5. Like he just is. He was outstanding. And this is a guy that when he was drafted, back in April, was a guy that everybody talked about, oh, he's too small. Like, how's he going to fit? No, this doesn't work in the NFL. He's not going to be able to play. He's not going to hold up at this level. He's not going to be able to do that. He has just, he credits somewhat DeAndre Hopkins, but through the coaching staff as well, just been able to ramp up his workload, been able to ramp up his involvement in the offense, and been able to get to the point where he is a legitimate star. What we saw this week, yes, it was backups for the last big bomb play there, but what we saw this week is just a preview of what we're going to see with Xavier Worthy in Kansas City for the foreseeable future here. He put on a show. He beat this defense. He gave you some hope there at the end of the game while you were watching. Not hope that they're going to win the game, but hope for the future. You look at Xavier Worthy and the way that he played, the connection downfield with Patrick Mahomes, that's what you wanted when they drafted him. And what you saw at the end of the year and then in the playoffs prior to the Super Bowl was what we didn't expect. Some of the tougher catches, some of the ability to shake some of these. The Philadelphia Eagles are a fantastic tackling football team. I remember a play where Xavier Worthy shed a tackle and got upfield. Fantastic football team at tackling in open space. He was able to shed that. That was his big knock. That's what he was not able to do. It was fantastic to sit back and watch him play well, despite everything else. Because at that point, obviously, we were in full acceptance mode. The loss was on. Everything was like that. But Xavier really was terrific. And it wasn't just the Super Bowl. It was everything leading up to the end. I think everybody should be legitimately excited about what he's going to do, what Rashee Rice is going to do when he's back as well. Went several years of trying to go get a wide receiver, get somebody that can play outside of Tyreek Hill after they traded him. It's starting to feel like, oh, hey, I like the wide receivers a little bit. I like the talent that's out there, and I like the high end of it. It's not just these are functional role players within the offense that are going to be Juju Smith-Schuster in 2022 is what I'm referring to here. Good football player, but wasn't like take over a game kind of football player. Xavier Worthy might be a take over the game kind of football player, and it was a little bit of a coming out party for the national media who have not seen this out of him yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those two. Do we need to give Connor Embry his flowers for developing Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy?
Conversation?
I know,
and Rashee Rice.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
do we want to? Connor Embry's big thing. Everybody wanted Connor Embry gone because Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore
and the interview.
But Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore were not good receivers. We're not able to get on the field. We're not able to produce. I think we can chalk up Kadarius Toney to Kadarius Toney and not Connor Embry at this point. So really, you're just laying this at the feet of Sky Moore, who was a smaller school guy that we all loved. And, it just hasn't clicked for one reason or the other. Everybody wants to hang on to those two guys as, oh, Connor Embry's not a good football coach. Rashee Rice in a rookie year was fantastic and was poised to do even more. And Xavier Worthy in a rookie year was fantastic and is poised to do even more. Andy Reid does not like using rookie wide receivers. And you're looking at those two guys now going, I feel pretty damn good about wide receiver 1 and 2 right now. Like I legitimately feel good about it. I think we got to give a little bit of a hat tip to Connor Embry after lots of years wondering if he was even it at the wide receiver coach position.
The last 2 seasons, the Chiefs' best wide receiver has been a rookie.
Coaching.
Good job, Connor Embry. You deserve some credit. Defense, I think, is like the only other good thing. I think in a neutral game script, that defense had enough. They had enough. If that game script is neutral and if that's a competitive football game for 4 quarters, I truly believe that Steve Spagnuolo and that defense had enough to win that football game. It was so lopsided offensively. It was just so over. But I mean the defense really, they got put in terrible spots, and yeah, some of their red zone offense was terrible, and like credit the Eagles for picking their spots and picking on some players there in the middle of the field when they needed him the most. But outside of the Jalen Watson play the Jalen Watson against Jahan Dotson was horrendous. The red zone
Trent
defense,
was not particularly good well.
Trent and AJ Brown was a mismatch for sure.
Yeah.
But they shut Saquon down. They absolutely shut him down. He was not a factor in the run game. And I think Maddie said it on the show. It's not like they were throwing 9 in the box. They just played good, disciplined run defense and had it sniffed out and played very well against the run.
It was fantastic. Saquon Barkley averaged 2.3 yards per carry on 25 carries. Like, they didn't just go, oh, well, we got the matchups we want in the secondary. We're just going to throw the ball up and have these guys go get it. Some of that happened. We'll get to that. But they were able to line up and make plays. Drew Tranquill had maybe his best game of the year. Really did. Leo Chanel played like his hair was on fire. Like, stopping the run
That's what he does.
Was his job, because it is. And he did really well at it.
Yeah.
Nick Bolton played well in the run game. Yeah, he got picked on a little bit in the middle of the field.
He made
Philadelphia Eagles got AJ Brown on him on a touchdown. That's not on Nick. What's he gonna do?
He made a tremendous play on Saquon in the flat.
Yes.
Tremendous. He did some good things in the run game. Some great blitzing. Coverage was brutal. Whole second level
was fantastic. Like, it really was. Defensive line. Mike Pennell played really, really well. I was very pleased with Mike Pennell. Justin Reed, Brian Cook played pretty well as well. Shamari Connor didn't seem like a liability out there. Yeah, Jaden Hicks played well. Like, all of these were good. They had good performances from the guys that you would have singled out before the game and said, these guys need to have a good game in order for this team to win, in order for this defense to have a good game, because you would have counted on guys like Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie stepping up, which, that again, they're getting beat all over the field. What are you going to do? Put in Joshua Williams and Najee Johnson? Those guys got beat. They did. It wasn't their best game as a part of that. Chris Jones goes out with this knee injury early. So you lose a guy that can create some interior pressure in the middle there. Okay, now that's gone. Now you're relying on guys like George Karlaftis, Charles Omenihu, Mike Dana to step up in a big way, and that's just not their thing, especially against good tackles that the Eagles have, which they do have really good tackles. That's just not where they're going to win. That's a matchup that favors the Philadelphia Eagles. And yet, we're looking at all of this and saying they got spotted 14 points by the Kansas City Chiefs offense. 14 points there by a pick that was already in the red zone and a pick 6. I don't want to hear this stat that keeps going around right now that the Philadelphia Eagles are the first team to score 40 points on Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs. Man, miss me with that. That is
not true.
26 points. 26 points at most, and that's me looking the other way on that fumble that they held them to a field goal, which would have been 23.
Yeah.
So Steve Spagnuolo and this defense did enough. They did what you would expect this to happen. They came up with a good scheme. They stopped Saquon Barkley. They stopped the one guy that could have taken over the game. Saquon got his in the passing game, but they put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands, and they said, Jalen Hurts, you go beat us. And for the second straight Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen kind of did. And I will take those odds every single time. I really will. Saquon was the guy, was the engine as a part of that. And you take away those 14 points there, this is a game that is a lot closer for a lot longer, and the play calling changes. Some of this stuff changes where their Eagles are going to be pressing a little bit. It just changes the entire dynamic. I was impressed by the defense. They were good, not great, but they were good enough for what they needed to do there. So, yeah, they were good.
My only gripe with, Spags, the only gripe I have with that whole like game plan, it really didn't even have to do with like play calling as much as just like the Chiefs tried to stop the tush push by laying their $30 million tackle over the football.
Yeah, got his neck a little wrenched there. Yeah.
I just don't know why you would put your $30 million D tackle in that position to just get completely mollywopped by the entire interior offensive line of the Eagles. Roll up on a calf, roll up on your ankle accidentally, or roll up on your neck. You're just giving up a free shot to your back. 3 guys, and then hoping, like, I hated that. I don't know what that was. I don't like, if you're going to do it, it can't be your $30 million defensive tackle. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I agree. I mean, he's 6'6", so I assume you're trying to basically put the biggest speed bump that you can put out there. I mean, Mike Pennell lays down there, he probably gets stepped over. But I thought it was unique. I thought it was different. I didn't think it really,
didn't do it.
I don't think it really mattered. I mean, Chris Jones obviously hurt his neck a little bit there, but the knee injury was the one that iced him for the game. And that was just, they were on the field forever because the offense couldn't get anything going. They were just on the field forever, could not get off the field on third downs. It was bad in that regard. But yeah, I'm with you. I understand what you're saying there. That's a lot of money to just kind of lay at the goal line for a play that you're probably not stopping anyway.
Yeah, I didn't get that. That's all. Okay, that was good mixed with a little bit of bad at the end. And now I think we kind of move on a little bit, right? Like, I'm sure that the game will pop up in our memories and in our conversations over the course of the offseason. But I mean, it's the offseason now. And so you kind of look at, like, where does this team go from here? This is a pivotal hit. Regardless of if the Chiefs had won this Super Bowl or not, this was going to be a pivotal offseason for them. Like, I think we're going to have to go through and experience a reset. This team pushed the chips in a little bit, and not like all in, but they strategically pushed their chips in, for this three-peat, right? Like, they didn't, hamper the entirety of the future. They showed restraint at the trade deadline. And by the way, like, Cam Robinson's the only tackle that even became available. Cam Robinson, I don't think, is solving last night's problems, by the way.
I don't know. Does he play?
Yeah.
I mean,
I just don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he solved that problem, right? Maybe, but I don't know, man.
I think it's a different problem. I don't think that, like, Cam Robinson doesn't all of a sudden swing this back to a neutral game. Yeah, I'm with you. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have shown some restraint. They didn't, like, dip into their high assets for 2025. They've got an extra 3rd-round pick, which is right up against their 2nd-round pick with the L'Jarius Sneed pick. So they've trade. So they've got some assets there. They got a lot of key free agents. I mean, they've got a long list of players that they are potentially losing in this game. I mean, like, just throwing Trey Smith, Justin Reed, Hollywood Brown, Nick Bolton, Juju, Tershawn Wharton, Charles Omenihu, Derek Noddy, McCole Hardman, Mike Pennell, Samaje Perine. I'm just going through the list here, but, like, this is a laundry list of players. Yes, they've got blue chips out there, but they've also got really key role players in there, players that they've gotten good value out of over the course of their career too. This is a lot of players to lose in one offseason. This is a very difficult challenge for this team to try to figure out.
It is. And I think the first lever you got to pull is you got to figure out what's happening with Joe Thuney. I was definitely hey, this is probably Joe Thuney's last year in a Chiefs uniform prior to this season. I'm not there anymore. I think the way that they utilized him at the end of the year, the way that they were able to flex him out to left tackle in a pinch, the way that they trusted him to play all the way through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl, I think we're to the point now where we can safely say that Joe Thuney is going to be back on this roster. And if you're going to do that, you got to extend him. I believe it's a $27.5 million cap hit. Is that something like that? For
27, coming in right at 27.
27. That's too much. You're not paying Joe Thuney to play that. So a small extension, 2-3 years, something like that. And you can get yourself in a position where you still have an all-pro left guard. He is an all-pro left guard, and you can reduce that cap hit a little bit, free up some of that as well. Next thing that we got to talk about, what's happening with Travis Kelce? Is he retiring? Is this something where he's going to try and play out some of this? Do they need to do something with his cap hit for 2026? I don't know. Travis Kelce refusing to speak to the media after the Super Bowl, I think, is a little bit telling, and simultaneously isn't.
And I will
He's
say,
very emotional about that.
He did speak. He did speak in the locker room. He didn't do a full podium. I do think it is a little bit interesting that he just kind of limited how much media availability he had.
Correct. Yes. Didn't podium, and he has in the past. Yes, he's a very emotional individual. He's obviously very beat up by the fact that he did not win a Super Bowl. They did not three-peat. But his heart is in this 1,000%. I just don't know if the body is. And, sucks getting old. But they've got to figure that out. And Travis Kelce should do whatever he needs to do and take whatever amount of time that he needs to take, even if it messes with a little bit of the free agency plans. Frankly, I don't care, because Travis Kelce has done so much for this franchise that if he needs to take an extra couple weeks, okay, fine. Figure out a different way to make this work in free agency. Don't rely on that to happen. But if you've got Joe Thuney staying, you've got Travis Kelce retiring, let's just go down that route. Now, all of a sudden, you've got some cap space to play, and you need offensive line help. I don't think for a second that they are going to go into another year and say, well, we're going to select another rookie and hope this one works out. No, I think that they are going to spend on a guy. That's tough, because this free agent offensive tackle market is buns. Like it's bad. It is truly bad. Ronnie Stanley is the marquee name. This is the first healthy season that he has had in forever. Kent, you are muted, buddy.
Craig, this is the first season that he has played every single game in his entire career. It's weird that, and he's 30 years old. This is his last chance to get the bag, and it's his first year playing a full season. Yeah. It's like,
I get it. I get the trepidation, but he's also the clear best guy.
Yeah.
There's not, the next guy is maybe Jedrick Wills.
You've got, Alaric Jackson from the Rams, but
Alaric Jackson has such short arms.
He's 33 and 3/4 inch arms. I know.
He's got Joe Thuney arms. Okay. Why are you playing him at left tackle? It's just not a guy for that. And then now all of a sudden, you're very quickly back to DJ Humphries. And that's not a position you want to be in. I
clearly
kind of threw this out to our group chat earlier today. I was looking at the 2022 NFL draft to see guys that, let's see, are these teams really needing a pick? Are they willing to come off of a guy? Seattle surely doesn't want to get rid of Charles Cross, but what would it take? You need to find a solution as a part of this. And free agency doesn't appear to be where it's going to be. So let me ask you this question, Kent. If they did nothing and they said, we believe that Kingsley Suamataia is going to be the guy next year, we think that that's going to be the case, but we've got some break glass in case of emergency stuff back here that we're able to do around the trade deadline or something like that. And we've also got Joe Thuney waiting in case Kingsley doesn't formulate. How are you feeling about that? Because I know I'm not feeling great.
I'm not feeling good at all. And it's, maybe Kingsley pans out at tackle. Maybe he doesn't. it's not even necessarily completely a knock on, Kingsley. I want him to see him develop. I think he has traits to be an NFL offensive lineman. It's just tough to say, you know what, the thing that kept you from, being able to win the Super Bowl last year, we're going to run it back. And we're just going to go with an unknown 22-year-old kid on the left side. I just don't know if I can sign up for that. But there's tackle options aren't great. The free agent class,
bad. They're actively bad. The tackle options are actively
Cam Robinson,
bad.
Joe Noteboom, Patrick McCarry, Jedrick Wills, Alaric Jackson, Chuck Okorafor became available today. Dan Moore in Pittsburgh. These are not guys that are raising the floor super high. And maybe it would have been enough. I don't think so, but maybe it would have. I don't know. The tackle. So you've got really tough decisions to make with. You talk about Tooney, Trey, Nick, Justin.
Damn.
You're not paying all those guys.
No, you can't. You can't pay all those guys.
Now, and I think this draft is better than people have been saying. This is not the 2013 draft that people were calling. And by the way, Travis Kelce was in the 13 draft. DeAndre Hopkins was in the 13 draft. Lane Johnson was in the 13 draft.
Eric Fisher was not bad.
Eric Fisher wasn't
Let's not pretend like Eric Fisher was bad. Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. This draft stinks. Yeah, it's not the best draft, but there's players we treat it like there's no players that can help this team win or help your team. That's just not true. This great D tackle class, great running back class. But this is the most open-ended offseason I think we've seen the Chiefs have in the Patrick Mahomes era, where you've got, I think even when they traded Tyreek Hill, there were very clear team needs, right? You could see what this team needed and they addressed them, right? The things that you could tell this team needed, they addressed them. You could make a case for running back, tight end, wide receiver, tackle, guard potentially. If you're sitting here, safety, corner, linebacker, D tackle, D end, corner, every spot outside a quarterback, it's open ended, and you're just gonna have to watch and see. There's a action reaction to this entire offseason because every position's on the table and it's just a matter of what dominoes fall in place. Do they address receiver? How do they address receiver? What do they do at tackle? Are they going to ride it out until the draft and try to see if they can figure the tackle situation out there? Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, half the league probably doesn't want to trade with them anymore. So even if the Chiefs come calling and you want to trade up for a tackle, you may not be able to. Your teams to call might be down to 6 or 7. So you've just got there's these variables that you've got to take into consideration for this entire thing. And I think it's gonna be a painful offseason for some people because you're gonna have to say goodbye to some players you love. Everyone, I think every fan is gonna say goodbye to a player that they really loved this offseason for the Chiefs. That's what it feels like is gonna happen, and maybe it's just Kelce. But I
know, but Kelce just that's 100% hit rate for the fan base, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That
might be the free card on the bingo. I'm just saying, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a really tough one for Chiefs fans.
And on top of all of that, they've got a defensive identity. I really truly believe that, and I don't think that even if they decided to say goodbye to a Justin Reed or a Nick Bolton, that they're going to be staring at their defense and going, oh, wow, no, they've got to change their defensive identity. I think it's there. They've
got that 2022 class for one more year.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing I think that's kind of the thing that made them tick, and that's why they did what they did.
And then on top of that, I've long condoned a corner. Hey, a 29-year-old corner that played pretty well within Steve Spagnuolo's system and Charvarius Ward that all of a sudden is going to be a free agent, that it would be really nice to catch him on the cheap, come back home to Kansas City. Now, all of a sudden, your coverage shell looks a lot different. If you retain Nick Bolton, you've got Jaden Hicks and Brian Cook back there. And now, all of a sudden, you're thinking about the defense. You're going, I feel okay. about that. Trent McDuffie in the slot, Jalen Watson, Charvarius Ward outside. Yeah, I feel good about where they sit in that. You've still got George Karlaftis. You've got the ability to maybe re-sign Charles Omenihu. I think the defense is okay. All of these assets outside of that one position that I just mentioned there, all of these assets, I think you've got to really funnel into an offensive identity. They changed everything after trading Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes became not a check down merchant, but a take what is there guy. And the entire league shifted to try and take him away, take what they did best with Tyreek Hill away. And he played efficient football, kept it short, moved the sticks, did things well. They are now in a situation where their offensive line is decimated. They got guys leaving. They got to figure out something there. They've got some pretty good young weapons, but they don't have a tight end if Travis Kelce retires. They don't have a backfield that you feel comfortable with, even with Isaiah Pacheco on this roster. You need a guy that's a difference maker back there. And you need to change what you are asking Patrick LaVon Mahomes to do. He's not LaVon right now. We haven't seen him be LaVon very much this season. Now, that being said, that throw that he hit Xavier Worthy on, that was LaVon. Like, that's throwing with his chest. That is dialed in. Where has that been all year long? Where have some of these tight window throws been all year long? Where is the guy that we know and love? They have turned him into this guy that plays more like Alex Smith, not a knock against Alex Smith. That's who he was. He was very efficient than that was Patrick Mahomes. I get as you grow into the quarterback position, you take what's there, you become a better, more efficient passer. They need a guy that's going to come in and have the ability to unlock and play both ways. It seems like they've just abandoned early season or early career Patrick Mahomes in favor of what we've got right now. And this has just completely gone away. They need both. They need the ability to mix and match. If a defense is playing everything short and they're daring you to go deep, have a guy that can go deep. If everybody's playing soft and all of that, have a guy that can take everything and do a methodical 10, 15 play drive that scores a touchdown. That's what you need. He is surgical enough to do both, and we just haven't seen it. We haven't seen it in so long right now, and it's in there. We know it's in there. It's him. So that's really the change. It's less about personnel. It factors in for sure, but they need somebody to come to the table and say, this is what we need to be now. We can't be this any longer. We can't just be this team that is painful to watch on offense because we know it can be better. It needs to be somebody that can open it up. I mean, you don't buy the Ferrari to take it around the block. You do it to put it on the racetrack. So get some of the racetrack back in there and then, drive to the store and everybody can, kind of turn their heads, be like, oh, what's that?
Or just drag race in your neighborhood.
I did not say drag race, Kent. I did not say drag race. We don't talk about drag racing anymore.
Oh. Don't. No. Oh, that's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.